All eyes are on President Trump's meeting with Vladimir Putin. But many foreign policy experts say the bigger threat to America's future comes from China, not Russia. President Trump plans to impose more tariffs on China, this time a tax of about 10% on $200 billion worth of goods. Here with more is China expert Stephen Mosher. He's author of the book, The Bully of Asia, Why China's Dream is the New Threat to World Order. Okay, Stephen, thanks for joining us again. Critics say this is the start of a trade war with China. What do you think?
Well, I don't think it's the start of a trade war with China at all. I think people need to understand that China has been at war with us across all domains, including trade, for the last 25 years. It's a low-key war. It's a non-kinetic war. But make no mistake, they've been in a trade war with us for a quarter century. What President Trump is trying to do is end the trade war that China is carrying out against us. You can't start a trade war that's already been underway for a long time.
So what is President Trump really after with China? Is he on the right course, Stephen?
Oh, absolutely. I argue that American companies have never been able to compete fairly with Chinese companies because, look, if you're an American company and you go into China, you're squeezed dry of your high-tech technology, your software, your intellectual property, and then you're squeezed back out of China. American companies aren't competing with Chinese companies. People need to understand they're competing with the Chinese party state. And that is an unwinnable situation. It's got to change. And it starts with righting the trade imbalance. We simply cannot sustain a $400 billion loss every year in trade terms to China. And add to that $600 billion. That's not my estimate. That's the FBI's estimate. $600 billion in stolen intellectual property. $600 billion plus $400 billion is $1 trillion being made off with China, by China every year. We cannot let that continue.
And some of the critics of this policy are saying, well, wait a minute, what about American farmers? The reciprocity of tariffs that China's imposing on the U.S. is only hurting our agricultural business.
Well, the Chinese are responding by imposing punitive tariffs on a few goods that they think will hurt President Trump politically. You know, I had to smile the other day when President for Life Xi Jinping, make no mistake about it, he will be in office forever. He's the new Red Emperor in the mold of Chairman Mao Zedong. Xi Jinping said, "We Chinese don't turn the other cheek. We punch." And I'm thinking he's talking to the greatest counterpuncher the world has ever seen. In fact, we have a lot of leverage over China. They need to continue draining us of our high technology, draining us of industry, transferring most of the world's industrial production to China in order to succeed at their China 2025 plan. What is the China 2025 plan? It's a plan to have all high-tech manufacturing, especially cutting-edge things like robotics and so forth, manufactured in China by 2025. And from there, 10 years later, China 2035 plan is to dominate the region and the world. It's not in our interest to let that happen.
Now on to North Korea. What do you think of Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's recent visit to North Korea, and what did he accomplish there?
Well, here's where the rubber met the road. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo went to Pyongyang and said one thing. He said, "I need a complete list of your missile production facilities, of the locations of your missiles, the nuclear production facilities, the location of the existing nuclear weapons that you have, 20 or 30 in all. And then we need to set a phased process of dismantling all of these things. And once this happens," he said, "we can talk about a peace treaty. We can talk about withdrawing American troops. We will have peace on the Korean Peninsula." The North Koreans didn't like the fact that there were real demands being made of them in exchange for lifting the sanctions. And I have to say, this administration, for the first time, I've been following this for 30 years now, this administration, for the first time, has gone about dealing with North Korea the right way. It is imposing sanctions on North Korea and demanding results. Every parent in the world knows that you don't reward bad behavior in your children. We've been rewarding bad behavior in North Korea from the time of the Clinton administration, giving them money and saying, "Please play nice." And of course, we got more of the same. Now we're going about it the right way. We're punishing bad behavior. The punishing sanctions will not be lifted unless North Korea complies. And in fact, there's a lot more we can do. we can actually ask countries to send their North Korean workers home, from which North Korea gets a lot of remittances overseas. We can cut back on trade even further. We can put more pressure on China, for example.
And Stephen, since the Singapore summit, though, we've seen North Korea continue with its nuclear and missile development programs. Is Kim Jong Un sincere about denuclearization, or is he just once again playing us?
Well, I think that Kim Jong Un, who is the third in the Kim dynasty to rule North Korea, is always playing us, is always engaging in deceit and deception. But the fact is that we have now put him in a box. We put him in a box by getting his attention, by getting him to Singapore, by showing him that he had one of two avenues he could pursue. He could either continue his nuclear weapons program, or he could develop North Korea into a modern, dynamic state with open borders.